Welcome, episode number 55 of the Oklahoma Weather Show. Here we are at the very end of April, getting ready to go into the month of May. It's certainly the middle of our severe weather season. Here in Oklahoma, we have received quite a bit of rain in the last couple of days. Certainly something that we need, especially out across western Oklahoma. This podcast airs live on KOCO.com every noon, and then also airs on KOCO.com. We'll have it on YouTube later into the evening once we post it online. But this show today, I'm KOCO Chief Meteorologist Damon Lane. We have Jonathan Conder, Brad Souter. Shelby is doing some wedding planning. Don't ever want to get in the middle of wedding planning, right, guys? No one's going to touch that one? No?
You don't want to get in the way of a young lady planning a wedding. I know that.
No, you do not. No, you do not. Well, hey, this rain has been pretty good. If I can pull up some of these. Let me pull up some of these rainfall totals. Let's see here. Let me do a screen share, actually, because we actually had a good amount of rain, probably a lot more than I think some of us were expecting. But in the last month, I mean, how amazing is it to see Cheyenne, Wyoming, having over a foot of rain, 13 inches of rain? That's more rain in western Oklahoma than anywhere else in the state. Jonathan, Brad, you all been here for a while. When was the last time you saw western Oklahoma have more rain than eastern?
Take a stab.
I don't remember.
Go for it.
I can't remember. I mean, look at that. I apologize for the noisiness in here, by the way. We got some stuff going on in the background. But yeah, look at that. 13 inches of rain in Cheyenne. I mean, this has been such an amazing time of the year to get all this rain out across western Oklahoma. I know this is really going to help out with lifting the attitudes of farmers, ranchers. It really makes just a lot of people out across the West who thought that this was going to be another dry year. Certainly, it should at least point them in a much better direction when they get.
I think they're cautious too. You know, I think Lloyd Colston there in Altus, you can see, was at 4. Is that the 6 or the 4 for Altus? Which one is Altus?
Maybe the 5.34.
Oh yeah, okay, there you go. So they're that's great. 30 days of 5 inches of rain in Altus. They're all just very cautious right now too, because the drought's been going on for 4.5 years for them, and now that they're getting rain, you never know how long it's going to last. Is this all they're going to see? So they're trying to urge people, just because there's standing water, no need to over rejoice just yet. Let's try to harness everything we can, every draft we can get, in case it's not.
And by no means are we even close to getting out the drought here. I mean, we have a 5-year drought ongoing, but this is at least a point in a different direction than where a lot of these lakes and parts of the state have been going with their moisture. I mean, it seemed like every single event was always central and eastern Oklahoma. So this is just one. This is a 30-day rainfall, so basically the month of April. I know Lake Altus, Lugert picked up. They saw some improvements in their lake levels. I believe they're now up to 15 or 16% full. Canton Lake is doing better now. They're still pretty low, but this is pretty big. Even central Oklahoma, 5-6 inches of rain. We usually average this month about 3 inches of rain. And now I think the drought might be, if you kind of look at this, we're probably going to see some at least an increase in drought up to the northeast. But all of this rain that we picked up with this last rain event will be calculated in tomorrow's drought monitor that will come out. That cuts off Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. So anything that fell before 8 a.m., which was about 99.9% of that moisture, is going to be calculated into the drought monitor. Jonathan, I know a lot of times you keep a pretty close eye on that drought monitor. How big of improvement do you think we're going to see?
Can we quantify that? That's a good question. And I'll be honest, I know more about radar meteorology and mesoscale forecasting than I know about what the U.S. Drought Monitor will do. I think that's maybe a call for the state climate, or question for the state climatologist, Gary McManus. But I will say we saw an improvement last week out in Roger Mills County. And they dropped down. So the question is, how much more can they drop down? The parts of western Oklahoma, which have been under a D4, which is an exceptional drought. So the drought levels go D0, which is just abnormally D1 moderate, D2 severe, D3 extreme, D4 exceptional. That's the worst. We did see the exceptional drought over the last 2 drought monitors get decreased, so which is pretty good. And yep, there it is. And so if you look in far western Oklahoma, that's a big improvement over Roger Mills County. And so what's going to happen? Will they see most of the extreme being eroded away and maybe a little, D1 popping through? I don't know. You'd imagine.
Yeah.
But,
well, and you can see right here. There's this where Cheyenne is. There's a little drop in there down to a severe drought. So there's been some improvements now here across Oklahoma City. We're sitting at a moderate drought still, but I think we're gonna get some good improvements in here. So this is good. This is definitely a good. This is a step in the right direction, and we're not even in our wettest time of the year. We still have May and June. June's the wettest month of the year. May is the second wettest month of the year. Let's hope the rain comes during those time periods. But we know that also during the month of May, usually when we're talking about heavy rain, we're talking about severe weather. This has been a pretty interesting month when you look at just the amount of severe weather that we've had, or at least the type of weather pattern. We haven't had any huge severe weather outbreaks, but it's just been kind of what I would call a sloppy severe weather pattern, where each and every single day when we have a storm system nearby, there's always something that wants to come in and at least bring in that risk. We know this time of the year there's always going to be some type of tornado threat. Jonathan, you and I were staring very much down at those tornadoes in Texas on Sunday night, and some people within the weather community have been talking about how big these tornadoes were, these big wedge tornadoes, and yet they were all rated an EF0.
So that's an interesting topic. If a large violent tornado goes into the field and doesn't hit anything, was it ever a large violent tornado? So it was given the EF scale as a damage scale. So it's by looking at the damage we can infer and figure out how strong the winds were inside of that. I think you just opened up Pandora's box, because I think there's a bunch of topics there that you just brought up about the Sunday night tornadoes southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. So the question is, A, chasing at night, B, getting too close to chasing at night. Make sure you report what you know you're reporting. I mean, there's a lot I can talk about, but your original topic is I think we're getting a little feedback on it.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I don't know if that's going to be for now my audio here a little bit. See if that helps. So, if you look at some of the couplets and people reporting large, violent, wedge tornado, and there were only EF0s. I don't know what the largest tornado was down there, but I don't know. Where do you want to start, Damon?
Yeah, Brad. I think actually, Brad, who was your friend up in Colorado that we had a while back?
Roger Hill.
Roger Hill. Yeah, he had sent out a picture. We'll have to pull it up on Twitter, but he was talking about a large wedge tornado that was coming in. But just like in Oklahoma, a lot of these Texas towns are much like any other communities out here, where if a storm goes half a mile outside of the city limits, it touches nothing, and it doesn't get a big rating. El Reno tornado is a very good comparison, an example. Now, here in Oklahoma, a lot of times when storms are popping up, OU is sending out their radar teams, and they're able to scan these storms, and so we're getting more information about tornadoes in Oklahoma than really in any other state. But the El Reno storm had winds of EF5, but because the damage didn't really hit much, wasn't that high, it got downgraded to an EF3. That is a interesting conversation that I know we can also talk about. When it's kind of like if a tree falls and no one hears it, did it make a sound?
Let me ask you guys. Do you guys know what the velocity of the couplet was like on this this storm in Texas? What kind of gate to gate shear were we talking about?
Oh, Jonathan had some screen grabs. I don't remember.
Yeah, I did some screen grabs. Obviously, because it's not real time, I can't necessarily. Let me look. Yeah, it's all on my iPhone. Gotta love that. I don't have the. Some was on GR, some was on radar scope. I would say, gate to gate at times. It was well over 100 miles per hour. Here's my problem. This is my problem. Okay, we're lucky. We saw it one time. I think they had maybe 2 or 3 tornadoes at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was 2, and then there was an anticyclonic satellite tornado. Why are guys getting so close that night?
Oh, I know.
I'm just going to put that out there. Why? And here's the debate. I know a lot of people, anyone in the chasing community right now, probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. Spotter Network is a phenomenal tool that storm chasers can get registered, they get grades on how they report, and they can ping their GPS location. That GPS location can be off by maybe a couple miles, not so much in the sense of the accuracy of the GPS, but because they're moving. They're moving at 60 miles an hour, and it takes maybe a minute for that data to get to Spotter Network, to get to Alice in the house, to get on other people's computers and such. But, I'm looking, we're watching this Sunday night, and I see guys that are in the tornado debris signature with correlation coefficient. Okay, let's say they're off by a mile. I'm sorry, I've chased that night. I've seen tornadoes that night. There's no reason to get within a mile. That you're putting yourself in so much risk. Did we not learn the lessons of El Reno?
Probably not. I think maybe a lot of time has gone by since El Reno. Last year we didn't really see a whole lot of severe weather. At the same time, I think a lot of people are in the mindset that it's only an EF5 tornado that you have to worry about. My biggest concern is not an EF5 tornado with the storm chasing community. It's going to be an EF1 or an EF2. One of those tornadoes that quickly pops up and it goes from nothing to something substantial within a couple seconds. Those are the storms that we really have to watch out for. And I was looking at the severe weather setup, what we're going into during the month of May. There's going to be a couple events where we start getting southwest flow, and I know a lot of people that actually, not only here in the United States, but even worldwide, that storm chasing is such an interesting, and really it's a hobby that's only unique here in the United States. You're going to have companies and tour groups from England, from France, from Europe. They come to the United States. People come to the United States to go storm chasing, and so we're about to see a lot more on the roads. You think we've seen a lot in April? Wait until you get into May and early June.
Well, I guess here's my problem is that I understand it's the one-up mentality. There's a lot of ego out there in the storm chasing community because it's like bass fishing. Who gets the biggest bass? Whoever catch Bassmaster, whoever wins the big bass wins. Yeah, it's like the video. Look at my tornado video. Yeah, I won. I think that's kind of the mentality. I think we come from it at more of, man, we want our stringers to be on it because they're showing video and we can tell the weather story. Folks, here's the tornado. This is what it looks like, and it's call to action for people. Giving them the extra warning of what's happening out there. People, I think this day and age, they have to see the video, right? They have to see the video to believe there's a tornado. Okay, fine. But at night, at day, you can see most, if you're not wrapped up in wrapping curtains of rain, if you're not in the hail core, you can see what's coming most times. At night, you can't, because it's only backlit by power flashes, which you're rural, you're not going to get any, and then lightning strikes. So what happens if you're so uptight you're so close to the circulation, right? you're not going to see. You're going to be so up close. This is what it's going to look like, and you're not going to see the other tornado come by and take you. That's what's going to happen. It's a matter of time. And does it happen this year or next year? It's just a matter of time before we lose another more chasers, storm chasing. I really hope it's not a tour group. I'm just going to put that.
No. Well, and there was a tour group that was pretty close the other night down in Texas. If we look at the Euro here, this is taking us out into late next week. You start seeing southwest flow coming in. Now, this is not always going to be a guarantee of severe weather across the plains. It kind of depends. But usually during the month of May, when you start seeing a low especially one of this magnitude that's dropping down across the southwest. That's going to start throwing little shortwave troughs out in our direction. This certainly has to be watched pretty closely. So we're kind of in a quiet weather pattern this week, thank goodness. I am very excited that we're dealing with this type of weather for now, but looking next week, this is going to be our next player.
It almost feels, coming out of April, that we've already had a whole severe weather season. Maybe that's just kind of stacked upon last year that was so quiet, but it feels like we should be done with it all, yet it's not even May yet.
I know. And I always tell people, our severe weather season out here is mid-March to basically mid-June, and it peaks in May. But yeah, this season just feels busier, and of course it feels different. It feels weird because it's not the big severe weather that we had in 2013, but it's just, like I said, it's never just one day. It's kind of a stretch of 4 days in a row, and you never really know just how bad each day is going to be until you wake up in the morning. It's very weird. It doesn't feel typical, but that's Oklahoma weather for you. So I can kind of take out. Let's go out. Let me take this out a little farther because there's going to be some at least good news. Let me pull back a screen share in here and show you what at least the Euro model is showing as we go out in towards the beginning of the third week of May. The third week of May seems to be the busiest severe weather week of the entire year. I almost feel like it's almost a sure thing that you can bet that there's going to be some type of severe weather event that happens across the plains, usually across Oklahoma, the third week of May. Climatology, it's what it says we should be experiencing. It's their peak severe or tornado season time of the year. This right here, though, would kind of show unsettledness across the southern plains. Nothing really substantial as far as any type of big-time severe weather outbreak, but I look up across the Pacific Northwest and I see this guy. Now, have to see if this guy ends up dropping down to the southwest and then across the plains, or if he just goes across southern Canada. But we're just going to be in just kind of sloppy weather pattern for a while. So we still have another month and a half. Cannot wait until the middle of June.
Do you know what tomorrow is?
May 1st? Is it May 1st?
No, it's 30th of April. Do you know what the 30th of April is?
What's the 30th of April?
More tornadoes have hit Oklahoma City Oklahoma City metropolitan area on April 30th than any other date on the calendar. So when it comes to climatology, tomorrow, April 30th, has the highest probability for a tornado to hit the metro. And then for Oklahoma, if you break down all the stats, and I think this is from 1950, May 24th.
May 24th?
Most tornadoes have in Oklahoma on May 24th. So the season peaks over Oklahoma City and moves to the west.
It's interesting. One of the biggest recent days, obviously, May 24th, 2011. That was a huge day. And I was writing about May 24th, 2011, just a little earlier today, talking about public storm shelters.
That was a good article.
That was the day, you may remember, Damon, when Edmund, the Piedmont tornado was occurring.
Yep.
Looked violent, didn't know how bad it was. Turns out that was an EF5. But it looked like it was turning right and going to come into Edmond. So Edmond schools announced we're going to open up all the shelters and have the public come into the schools, open up all the schools which have shelters. 8,000 people showed up, way more than the schools could ever handle. Santa Fe High School, 2,000 people showed up to Santa Fe High School alone. So, that's a scary situation. A lot of people always ask, why are no public shelters available in the city limits? Well, you have 1.3 million people in Oklahoma City, and you need 1.3 million people to fit in shelters if we had a big enough storm day. So you never know how many people are going to show up to shelters. That's why I think public storm shelters can be a bad road, a bad idea. I know it was interesting yesterday. We saw this week about the story about the Kansas Turnpike putting in tornado shelters along the Kansas Turnpike in Kansas. I think that's great. But in a big city, you just never know how many people will show up to one of those shelters. And if that's somebody's only a
Yeah.
scapegoat, only place to go, it may or may not be available.
I enjoyed that article that you wrote, and I remember the Piedmont tornado very well. I remember it was a very soupy atmosphere. No one could see anything. Our helicopter was within a couple miles of the tornado, and the visibility was so bad. Suddenly, Mark Fricklin and one of our storm chasers comes up on a scene, and you see the tree is debarked. There's a car that is flipped sideways, and that's when we knew that this thing was really, really bad. I remember at one point thinking, oh man, if this goes into Edmond. And then that storm eventually kept going northeast, went towards Guthrie. The Chickasha storm developed, and the Norman office was really close to issuing a tornado emergency. I wish I could pull it up. I took a screen grab of the NWS chat. They said, we're going to wait for one more radar scan before we determine whether or not we want to issue a tornado emergency. The storm got right up, just pretty close to the Canadian River, and then they didn't issue it. But that was a tough day. You know, you talk a lot about storm shelters. I know down here in Moore, we have about 15,000 homes in the city of Moore total. 11,500 of them, as of last week, had a storm shelter. The city is actually working very hard to make sure that every single-family home has a storm shelter. Now, the apartments that are being built and that are here, they don't have storm shelters, but the city has been doing a lot. So when you think about, you know, a town the size of Moore and what it's gone through, they're definitely getting shelters. But Brad, in your article that you mentioned, which I really liked, is that you mentioned how, you know, it's a way of living out here in Oklahoma. You move out here just like you want to buy a fancy boat, a fancy TV. Shelters are just as much of a necessity in a house. And the financing that they have on these shelters nowadays are next to nothing. I have seen 0% interest financing. I've seen 0.9% interest financing. I can promise you, even though I know they're expensive, you use it just once. And
you know, and everybody has a different circumstance too. I mean, there's that couple that's renting, or they're in an apartment, or you don't want to spend those thousands of dollars to put a shelter in something you're renting when you never know how long you're going to be there. What do you do about that? So everybody has a difficult circumstance on how to where to take shelter, where to go. I tried to offer some suggestions about, of course, just making friends with the neighbor in the neighborhood. Living in a mobile home park, obviously you've got to find shelter. If you can't find an adequate friend close by, can you eventually move to another mobile home park that provides shelter in there? Obviously, that's not a quick solution. That might not solve it for this year, but may give you that shelter for next year. So some people are really going to have to dig deep to find a plan. But Damon, you know, sometimes some people don't even wear their seatbelts. You know, you got a seatbelt. All you have to do is pull it over and strap it down. Some people just aren't going to take shelter. Doesn't matter. I'm not spending the money. I'm not going anywhere. Just living life on the edge, you know.
Yeah, that's unfortunate too when you say that. By the way, this reminds me of this. Does anyone ever remember? I'm going to pull the image up full and I'll do a screen share. Does anyone remember this idea? Y'all remember seeing this? The underpass storm shelter, which is not a good idea. I know a lot of people and this was, I think it was back during the Andover tornado, I believe, or maybe it was a little bit later when the whole get under the girders, and suddenly people thought that getting under a bridge was a great place to be for a storm coming in. This is not, and I remember this idea had some legs for a little while through social media, but it's not a safe thing to do. You know, we talk a lot about storm shelters, by the way, because there's this whole idea of what I call tornado shelter etiquette. And a lot of people in my neighborhood, they all have storm shelters. There are some that do not. But every now and then, you know, we'll tell people if there's going to be a bad day, hey, you know, we don't really have anyone coming to a shelter, so if you need to come, please do. But always double check with people on a bad, severe weather day whether or not that offer, if you're going to use their storm shelter, still stands, because I have heard some pretty horrible stories about storm shelters where basically you tell one person, yes, you can come over, and then they bring everyone over, and next thing you know it, You know, the 8-person or the 6-person storm shelter has 15 people trying to get into it, and people are left outside.
Mhm.
You know,
You know, also watch what you eat on those days because you get in a shelter. Never trust a fart. You know. You know, you got to be careful.
that is true. You know, someone's got to say it, right, Brad? Someone's got to say it. I actually I spoke to a group yesterday at Boeing. Boeing has been bringing in a lot of people from different parts of the United States. Seattle and Long Beach, California, are especially two very popular relocations coming into Oklahoma City now. And a lot of people there don't, you know, if you're from Seattle or California, you don't talk about tornadoes, but out here it's just a way of living. And so I was speaking to them about the do's and don'ts and what you need to know going into each storm season. And it was amazing because there was a lot more fear about tornadoes out here from those in California and Seattle than I thought I would probably come across. And I'm thinking, you all lived in a part of the United States that was 1 second away from that next 8.0 earthquake. You know, you didn't know when those were coming. That right there would probably make me a little bit more terrified. If I'm out in a spot and there could be an 9.0 earthquake, but there's definitely a lot of new people coming in here, and so
Yeah, they do seem to be fearful of Oklahoma. I think the outside perspective of people moving to Oklahoma or traveling here is that this is an extremely dangerous place. That why would you ever live in more Oklahoma? Well, why, you know, we need to demolish the city and move all of these people. You know, they just think that there's some horrible cloud of danger.
I know. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, even up in Seattle, they're trying to stop the elephants from being relocated from Seattle to Oklahoma City because they say the weather's too bad. We're getting ready to wrap this up.
But putting them in Oklahoma City, aren't you?
Brad, I got to ask you a question. It looked like there's a fruit fly flying around your ear like a second ago. I could see it. You have that HD webcam.
Where is he? Listen, I don't know what I've got some shrubbery out here that was blooming, and my daughter loves to think we live in a barn and just leave the door open here. I don't mind the breeze coming in, but fruit flies come in too, and I guess they found something to eat under a couch or something somewhere.
Is the dog hiding them treats?
I don't know, man. There's something somewhere, and I'm gonna find it eventually. There's gonna be an infestation of fruit flies because, yeah, I've got fruit flies.
I saw it flying around you like just a second ago.
You know, they're here. I mean, they just seem to attack me too. You'll be taking a nap and one will just come up and scream in your ear. I don't.
Hey, Jonathan, how's your yard? Should be looking pretty good after this rain. You were having some. It wasn't quite as green before, right?
I think my problem is Bermuda hasn't had a chance to grow because it's been cool in the overnight and not as warm during the day. But I did spray for some broadleaf weeds just yesterday.
Okay.
So,
those are popular this time of the year.
So hopefully this rain, I've had about 2.5 inches. Hopefully that gets things to green up a little bit.
Brad, how's your yard looking?
You know, I'm turning into a little yard Nazi. I think it comes down to everybody in my neighborhood has this pristine manicured golf course, grass, and then you look at Brad's yard and he's got some grass and mostly weeds. But this year I've tried to take control of that. I've actually been out there, rather than spraying the weeds, actually pulling them hand by hand, which is a pain. But whenever I try to spray my weeds, I end up killing all the grass too, because mainly I just have weeds, and that's not grass.
I think it's kind of like a gray hair. Like if you pull one out, 3 more come back in its spot. It's the same thing go for weeds. If you pull out one weed, 3 more pop up the next day.
Mm-hmm. But I've got the garden going out here. I tried to do seeds this year rather than starters. But, you know, and I just blocked off those little holes in my fence where the bunnies have been coming. I walked out here yesterday and there were 3 rabbits just kind of sitting there teasing me all around the garden. And they're like, we're just going to go in here and mow down your little starters that are coming up. So I planted the seeds because I'm always Well, actually, I planted 2 starters this year. As soon as I did, though, there was a 50-mile-per-hour wind later that day from an outflow, and it snapped them both off.
Oh.
So from now on, it's just seeds for me because they're so much cheaper. I don't. If I lose a couple, no big deal.
What are you growing?
Got some peas and carrots and green beans, a little bit of tomatoes, and some. I think that's about it.
We're gonna try to do a salsa garden. That's my goal. I want to do a salsa.
Do you have the jalapenos going?
No, we haven't landscaped that part because I want to do a garden that, in case this is gonna be our first garden we were trying to do. If it doesn't work out, then we can turn it into something else. So we're gonna try to landscape it up a little bit. But I want to do some.
I have the raised beds. They work well for drainage. I think you get a lot of rain, and it's not going to sit in there. It's just going to drain off. I think it's a little easier to mitigate that.
Good. Yeah, we'll try it out eventually. Do some tomatoes, peppers, you name it. So plus I need something that's high enough so that the dog likes to lift his leg. So we need something that's high enough so that we don't have a special type of flavor on the peppers and tomatoes. So anything else y'all want to add?
Mothballs.
Mothballs.
Yeah, Brad, put mothballs in a nylon stocking, and that mothballs will keep the rabbits away.
Rabbits. Okay. What about fruit flies?
I can't help you there.
Brad, I just saw you try to hit one.
Yeah,
So
I got him. He's on my shirt now, but yeah, mothballs. Okay, I think I've got little bricks in front of the holes in the fence where the dog is dug down or something. So hopefully that works. Now I just got to get rid of my flies.
we have bunny rabbit. We had a pretty big bunny rabbit issue here as well, and then they were gone for a while, and they came back.
You know what's the saddest thing in the world? You gonna hear this?
What's that?
When they burrow in your yard, like and they have the babies, and then you get out the lawnmower.
Oh no, I had
I didn't even know the burrow was there. And this was awful. I mean, it was awful. So I'm mowing, and
This is a G version podcast, Brad.
They all came up. Oh, there's 2 of them dead.
Brad, I've been there, man. I don't want to admit this. I do not want to.
Horrible.
I felt horrible.
What happened to you too?
Yes, I was mowing the yard, and the grass was pretty tall, and I went over something that I thought sounded like maybe I just hit a rubber ball. It kind of just. Oh, and I.
Well, I think I'd rather hit a bee's nest. Have you ever done that? You have the hornet's nest or the yellow jacket's nest?
I've never hit a bee's nest. Not yet. Knock on wood.
That's a bad day too. That'll make you fearful of mowing for years.
Oh, I felt so bad after the bunny rabbit incident. I still think about it.
Oh.
We need an uplifting message in this podcast so that we can at least bring people back again. Let's share some good news real quick. Tell me something good. Jonathan, what's the good news? How's your kid doing?
They're great.
Yeah, they're doing great.
The sky's blue. I don't hear any kids crying right now. Life is good.
I know. Brad, what's the good news? What's the good news?
Oil's up a little bit today.
That's good for people out here, yes.
For Oklahoma, yeah. Oil's up 4.08%.
Hey, you're that's the good news. Our 401k.
That's my daughter's current college fund.
All in oil.
Heavily invested in oil right now.
Mine is heavily invested in transportation, Boeing. So hopefully Boeing does really well. So all right, well, that's a little bit of better good news. We got some better news out of this. So all right, well, enjoy the quiet weather, the nice weather. Brad, get outside. Jonathan, I'll see you in a bit.